Okay, welcome everybody. My name's Dusty Gedge and I'm the President of the European Federation of Green Roof and Wall Associations. And the Federation has members across Europe, and we have two of our association members speaking in the panel today. What the Federation does is represent industry and academics and cities across Europe. And we try to further green roofs across the EU and in non-EU member states such as the United Kingdom. And this is actually a very, very exciting seminar we're doing today, because this sort of deals with the southern climes of Europe. A lot of what goes on in Europe has been progressed in northern climates such as Germany, Austria, the United Kingdom and Scandinavia. And obviously there's a lot of green roofs going on in the Mediterranean, but there's different challenges there. And obviously we get a lot of people requesting information about semi-arid and arid areas beyond Europe's shores. And we're very grateful for a colleague from the United States of America who's come and has done some excellent work in the western United States of America. So I'm now going to introduce everybody who's speaking. First of all, I'm going to introduce Paulo Paja from Portugal. He is the president of the Portuguese Green Roof Association. He's also director of NeoTurf, his landscaping company. And there's a lot of experience, I know, from working as far south as Gibraltar, and I know that he's done work in parts of the Middle East in terms of green roofs. And also we have Maurizio Crasso, who's director of Harpo Verde Pensieri, and also represents Italy on the European Federation. And what we forget sometimes in North is that in Italy, you've got climates that vary from Sicily all the way up to Bolzano in the Alps. So Maurizio has a lot of experience of working across those different climates all the way up the length of Italy. And I'd like to introduce Bruce Dvorak, who I've known for very many years and is a professor at the Texas A&M University, and has written a wonderful book called The Eco Regions, which focuses on green roofs all the way from Texas right up to Vancouver, and has a lot of experience of researching and looking at arid and semi-arid green roofs in his part of the United States of America. So I'm going to hand over to, and also what I'm going to do is hopefully set some challenging, interesting questions. I'm coming from a maritime climate, and I'm going to sort of challenge them to think of the future and how their work could look to the future in terms of green roofs in arid and semi-arid areas. So I think my job now is to hand over to Paulo to give a little presentation about his work in Portugal and elsewhere. Paulo, over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Dusty, for the presentation. I'm very happy to be here in this very interesting panel with three great experts, because I'm sure Dusty will also give us his experience and opinion. And today I'm not here as to share my opinions as the president of the Portuguese Federation. I'm here to share with you my experience as a professional working in this kind of climate conditions. And because we have short time, I will focus on the main things and main details and main differences that we must look when we work in this kind of arid or Mediterranean. I will focus more on the Mediterranean areas. That is the area that I'm working mostly. If you want to follow my work, you can also visit neoturf.pt, and you will find some nice information, some nice examples. Also, I would like to highlight, because this is something connected also, that I do some research looking for nature-based materials as cork. Portugal is the world's biggest producer on cork, and I'm trying and looking. We are trying and looking in our company to see if we can avoid some synthetic materials and some plastic materials from the typical green roof, and the typical roof as the thermal insulation in polyester, and work with natural materials in alternative, make it real green, the green roof. But that is something that you also can visit in our website. So going straight to the issue, I will focus on this part of the world, this part that shares the Mediterranean Sea, south of Europe, and with some particular climate conditions that are very challenging for all of us that work and want to install green roofs. And what are the main climate difference between Southern and Northern Europe, and what kind of consequences we must look when making the design of the green roof? We have more details than the ones that I will share with you, but I will go and focus on what I think it's really important. One of the big differences, it's not only the amount of sunlight, the amount of sun that we have in the south of Europe, but the power of the sun that we have. We have a serious UV radiation in many days, and this is something very challenging for the plants and can cause really difficulties in photosynthesis and other physiologic aspects of the plant. So we can have the double of the radiation from comparing to the north of Europe, and this is very challenging for the plants in our south conditions. Something that we also should look carefully is precipitation, and two aspects I think are very important. Here we have we compare Berlin with Faro. Faro is really in the south of Portugal, in the region of Algarve. And Berlin, we all know where is Berlin in Germany. And if you look, you can see that the average amount of rain each year, it's not so far from each other. So we have 570 millimeters in Berlin, and we have 510 millimeters in Faro. And this can be something surprising for many people. But the main difference, and what is very challenging, is the distribution of the rain, of the precipitation. And we can have in Faro 3 months without rain, some years. Here we have an average, and in this average, you can look 5 millimeters in June, you can see 0 millimeters in July, and 5 millimeters in August. But in some warm years, we can have 3 months without any drop of rain. And this is a huge challenge for the plants and a huge challenge for the way we must look at the design of the green roofs. If you look to Berlin, you have a very good distribution of the rain, and during the summertime, surprisingly for some of us, you have more rain than in winter months. So the consequence is obviously on what we need to do on the design. But we also need to look that we have very extreme rain events in the Mediterranean area because of the presence of the Mediterranean Sea and some morphology nearby the sea. We can have, and this was in 2020, this photograph, 90 millimeters precipitation in 24 hours. But what is really amazing is that 90 millimeters, it's not the biggest event. We can reach in some really extreme events 200 millimeters, and it's easily we go to 150 millimeters of rain. So this is really an amazing amount of water that we must deal and we must accomplish on the design of the green roofs. So in one side we have 3 months without rain, in the other side we can have really a big event of rain and a huge amount of water to deal. These two main characteristics have consequences, and to make a good resume about what are the main consequences for me and from my experience, is obviously the use of indigenous plants that are used to work in these conditions. Also, comparing to the northern pattern of the design of green roofs, we need more substrate depth, and also some difference on the type of substrates. We need to have a different granulometric curve with some more small particles, and also a little bit more organic, not too much organic, but a little bit more organic than in the north regions. This is completely from my experience on the field. And obviously we need to ensure drainage capacity and also the irrigation we need to install. I will show you some few slides just to finish my presentation. This is in Gibraltar, very stressed green roof with it was installed with sedum carpet. Some problems with irrigation, with the supplying of the water, and also sedum doesn't perform as the best performing plants in these climate conditions. Here in the south of Portugal, in Faro, you have two images on the left. We use a very FELL guideline inspired substrate without irrigation, and the plants were really trying to survive. And then we made some amendments on the substrate, and we start doing irrigation, and on the right side we can see the answer of these plants. Here again an example in Gibraltar, an installation with a sedum carpet. The irrigation system, the watering never worked. The irrigation system was there, but was not supplied with water. And what you see, it's almost a desert of plants. And some grasses, some native grasses just arriving and making their party on the roof. And this is something very significant. Again and again in Gibraltar, a sedum green roof without water, a lot of stress on those plants, and after some irrigation, the difference between the performance of these plants. This is in Faro, a watered sedum green roof. And we need to be very careful on the irrigation plan, because we are working with shallow, very thin layers of substrate. So we need to use less water, but with more frequent, because otherwise we are going only to lose the water, and the plants will not take the water from the system. And now some simple and nice green roofs in the south. This is a monoculture. I don't like monocultures, but the client wanted to have a Rosmarinus green roof. And this performed very well with very low maintenance, less frequency on watering. So we can look at a plant, maybe in the literature, the sedum are tougher than that, but in the practical, in the field, the Rosmarinus is much tougher than sedum. So big difference from books sometimes to the field. And here, what I like most to do is the mix of plants. This plant mix with different depths of substrate. Herbs, grasses, also we can use some Cassolacea plants. Also sedums are welcome, but with a mix of plants and with a different substrate depths, and this works very well in our climate conditions. Another mix of plants, and working very well: Festucas, Helichrysum italicum, Armeria maritima, Delosperma cooperi. So different types of plants, different families, and working together very, very well, and with a shallow depth of substrate with just 15 centimeters of substrate. In a different season, you can see the Helichrysum italicum flowering, very scent plant, very nice and Portuguese plant. This one is very new. It's for Porto municipality, more in the north. A little bit better climate conditions, but still we can have 3 months without rain almost, and a mix of nice plants working very, very well. So just to finish my presentation, I think in my final considerations, the European South countries, and in particular the Mediterranean region that I know most, shows very different climate conditions and challenges. They are not suitable to apply directly the green roof concepts and guidelines and products from Northern Europe. And this is something that we must be really careful. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we need to adapt that wheel, that information to this climate and very challenging conditions. So just some highlights: substrates must have a little bit more percentage of fines and a little bit more organic comparing to the FEL guidelines. In my opinion and by my experience, substrate depths should begin in our climate conditions in 15 to 20 centimeters minimum. And what we see, and it's that semi-intensive green roofs are really our extensive green roofs, because they need less maintenance than a lot of extensive types of green roofs that came from Northern Europe. So as I've shown you the Rosmarinus prostratus one. Drainage should be minimum, because root zone suffers with very hot air, but should be and must be enough to handle extreme rain events. So this is very important. And it is mandatory, in my opinion, to have the presence of irrigation system, because it is fundamental for the installation period, and it is very important when we have long drought periods. And obviously have a diverse plant community, mixing different plants, mixing different families of plants. And avoid, just to conclude my presentation, minimalism, so avoiding thin systems and monoculture must be really avoided in this type of climate conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paolo. I'm now going to, I've got a load of questions to get the panel discussion at the end, but I'm going to move swiftly on. I think what you talked about there is adapting. One of the things you talked about is adapting the standards, the codes of practice from the north. So I know Maurizio and the Italians have developed their own codes of practice over the last 15 years that I've known Maurizio. So Maurizio, could you tell us your story in Italy?
Yeah, thank you, Dusty. Thank you also, Elizabeth, for the organization. Very, very well done, as always. I'm very proud to be with you. And I must say that I agree 100% what Paolo said, but I would like to add some more indication. You can here, you see, I am one of the board of IVEB, that is our national association, and I'm also a manager and director for our ARPO Green Roof division in Italy. As Dusty said, in Italy we have a lot of different climate conditions, and so basically we get, first of all, to study this situation, no? Compare with the North European, or we said on the other side of the Alps countries. If first of all we studied can you go to the next, Elizabeth? Or I can do by myself?
You can do it.
Okay, thank you. Now, so what we have done first, many years ago, is to try to take in consideration a system to represent the water distribution. So you have these Walter and Liet diagrams, the two Swiss researchers, and they compare the water, the rain. So you see here every month you put the average of the maximum rain in a number of years. I've done here, you see, for 10 years. And the red curve is the temperature. But what says these guys, that if you consider the curve of temperature on the scale of the rain rate, you can interpret that as an evapotranspiration curve. So in practice, very simply, you can consider the red curve as the evapotranspiration curve, so the water need of the plants. So what you see, as Paolo said, in the Mediterranean climate, you have for a period in summer, you don't have enough water. The situation in Germany, for example, is completely different, as you have seen. So in Florence, for example, you see this is a typical curve. You see it's different than the Portugal curve, because you have seen that in Portugal you have a lot of water in winter. In Italy, in our area, we don't have water in winter. We have in spring and in autumn. You have a lot of water, and in summer you don't have enough. In Palermo, so in Sicily, you can consider close to semi-arid conditions. In the last 10 years, you don't have enough water for the plants. So basically, this demonstrates, first of all, that we need an irrigation plant, always. So what we have done, we have tried to make a norm that give indication to how to build and to design a green roof in our climate. So we have this norm from 2006, so it's 15 years. We have also renewed in 2015, so it's very well done, my opinion. And also it is in the 2015 we have introduced a new concept, so we consider the green roof as a system, a complete system, not as a normal series of layers. The main focus is the water availability. What I mean for that? You see, we have concentrate our studies in our company. Basically, this is a research in the University of Trieste, but we're working with also many other universities. And we have built a laboratory. You see here a camera in which we can simulate temperature, light, and so to stress very well the plants. What is nice that we found that it's not a question only of water availability, but also of temperature. This is something that we have to seriously take in consideration in our climate, in our countries, because for example, we have seen that plants that live easily in the desert climate, in full ground, they cannot survive in a green roof, because the temperature of the substrate goes up, even especially if you have a low thickness, and so the plants die. So these are the two main factors to take in consideration. So water availability and substrate temperature. About the water availability, we have introduced this graph in our norm that is based on the water potential. So what I mean is that the water is not in the same condition in the soil. When you have a lot of water, it's very easy to the plant to get it. Then you arrive to a wilting point here, PF 40.2, in which the plants die because cannot absorb anymore the water. So what have to take in consideration in our climate? So we have seen that the water content vary a lot along the year, during the year. So our plants are used to adapt themselves to these variations. So for example, they close the stoma, or the sedum lose the roots, or they take their own systems to defend themselves. But then there is more availability of water, they can absorb more, and so on. So what we say with this, we have introduced these parameters, that we say if the plants of our system, our green roof, can work in the part of the curve that has a higher gradient, then that is better, because in this part of the curve, or it means water content in the soil, the plants can understand very easily the variation of the water content. And so it can defend themselves. This is very important for our climate. So all our studies are concentrated on this curve. We try to for any kind of substrate, we try to understand which is the potential curve. Sorry, I come back. So not in the semi-arid, but more in the Mediterranean, what we suggest as extensive roofs is not sedum anymore, but a mixture of natural meadows. A natural meadow in our area has more or less 100 species and about 20-30 families. There is a small company near us that they create a mixture of vegetation in which in a couple of years you can have an association that is very natural, needs very low quantity of water, adapt very well to the rain, and you have a lot of biodiversity. So this is really the best, and also it performs very well in strong rainy situation, because this kind of system you can keep very low quantity of water in the substrate. So when it rains, this water can be used very easily by the plants. In Sicily, as Paolo said, our experience says that the best thing is to use garriga plants. So it means bushes, because and with a thickness about 15-20 centimeters. That is the best, because you can the plants can adapt, as I said, to the water retention curve, so they can live very well. If we come back to the sedum carpet, this is a study that the University of Palermo is doing using our system. You see 8 centimeters of substrate, as in the north of Italy, and with sedum. And I was very surprised that they could make the sedum grow. Okay, you don't have a good covering, but the sedum can live. But take in consideration that must be local sedum taken by the surroundings, because it is already selected by the nature. About maintenance, this is a green roof with made in Genova, in the north of Italy, and you see you have a very nice covering of sedum. After 10 years, you don't have any more sedum. Okay, this is a quite good climate, but the question is this one mainly about maintenance of sedum in our climate, that if you don't irrigate, you don't have a good cover, because we made many studies, we and others, and sedum really suffer. It doesn't die, but it stays very small. Okay. Then if you start irrigating, then then after a few years you get this kind of situation. The sedum disappear and arrive other herbs, maybe annual or other things that maybe you don't want. So my conclusion about the use of this kind of system, like Sidum in Italy, is not the best. You can do it, but it is not anymore an extensive. We consider an extensive roof a roof in which you don't have so much maintenance. A Sidum carpet in our climate needs a maintenance, or also made by expert people that knows the weeds to take away, that they know very well how to irrigate, and so on. So it's not really not easy. So the best solution in the north is a natural meadow. You find a good mixture, and in the south, bushes. This is what we arrive now following our experience, and what we are now working is not only the water availability, but we are working on the temperature of the substrate. That is a very important item for the plants. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I guess I'm next. So,
sorry.
Did you want to say something, Dusty?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Maurizio. I've known him for a long time, and also, sorry, Bruce, I had my mic on off. Thank you to both Maurizio and Paolo, who have to do it in a second language, where you and I do it in our first language. Bruce, so I'm going to hand over to you to tell us about some of your work and your experiences in the western side of the United States of America.
Yeah, great, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Dusty, for inviting me to this conversation. Already, I've learned a lot just by watching the first two presentations, and I'm hearing a lot of the same kinds of conclusions that some folks are coming to here for the Western U.S. as well. So for those of you that want to reach out, I do have a LinkedIn profile, and if you go to my website at Texas A&M University, you can find my contact information there. And I'm involved with a very important group here called the Green Roofs for Healthy Cities. Stephen Peck started that group here many years ago. And so I'm very happy to be engaged with their research committee and all those kinds of things. But anyway, welcome to all of you. Thank you for coming to this panel. All right, so I'm advancing the slides here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so my talk is it's going to cover some of the same themes, but obviously North America, we have some differences in situation. A good bit of my talk information is coming from the book, Eco-Regional Green Roofs. And I wrote this book because I knew there were many successful green roofs in the Western US, and very little was written about them. So when I had a sabbatical from the university, I saw a great opportunity to go out and learn from those people who have designed green roofs in the West. And what you're seeing here, this image, this was designed in the 1970s. So it's one of the oldest living roofs in North America. And it's in the Arizona desert, okay, the Mojave Desert. They do irrigate a little bit, but it's the natural vegetation. It has a deep substrate. So that's a theme that's going to come up here in my talk. So the situation in North America is we really have two major climate zones. If you look at the Köppen climate designations, that red line in the middle, that's the 100th meridian, and it's a dividing line for the humid east and the arid west. So green roofs came to North America in the east. In the east, they have quite a few rain showers during the summertime. So there's reliable rainfall, 40 inches or more in the east. But that red line, and it's because of the way the current, the jet stream flows, pushes all the moisture to the east. So what we have in the west is that red line is about 20 inches annual, and that is distributed in a variety of different ways. And you can see a little pocket in the Pacific Northwest. Green roofs also started there for us in, I'd say, the early 2000s. So there's a good bit of research and experimentation up there. However, their summers are dry. Okay, it's a bimodal distribution, which creates challenges because even though it may not be as hot as it gets in the desert Southwest, if it's not raining for 2, 3, 4 weeks, couple months, even if it's a warm, very warm day, it puts stress on plants. So managing water can be a challenge. So in terms of the application, I'm looking at a lot of semi-intensive type green roofs that are successful. Of course, intensive green roof can be successful because you have a deeper substrate. And I'll talk about watering in a little bit. And deep extensive, I think you could possibly have success around 15 centimeters if there's water. And finding a sustainable source of water is very important. And I'll talk about that in a little bit here. So in terms of the substrate depth and the type of soil, I think the approach really needs to come from an ecological view of green roofs. So not just thinking about a particular species or even genera, like just, sedum, monoculture. I highly support those common plants. So explore local ingredients.
Maybe turn your camera off, Bruce, and the internet might be a bit better and we hear you better.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
That's better, Bruce. Great.
All right. So the local it compacts, it doesn't perform well. However, completely natural or engineered growing media with no natural component added to it, it can take a long time for the microflora in the soils or the substrates to develop. So some people have mixed in small amounts of natural soils so that the microflora can be engaged in the soil and the roots of the plants can develop, and you start the soil ecology. So some people have explored with that. So here's an example. Opuntia is a prickly pear cactus, very popular, well distributed across the West. Very tough plant. It grows in shallow soils. But if you study the plants in the plant community, learn about the root system and provide a healthy depth to support that root system. That's one approach. And I talk about this in the book. It's, makes a lot of common sense. So this means, you really have to design a building for a long-term duration, right? So you don't want to put a green roof on a building that's designed to last for 10 years or 15 years. Put it on a substantial structure, a building that is going to be around for a long time, and it will protect that waterproofing membrane and it'll protect the whole system for a long time. So you want the plants to do the same thing, to be able to reproduce and to develop its own ecosystem. Okay, so here are a few examples. This is in the Phoenix area, this green roof. The substrate depth is 31 centimeters. But look at the slope, 4.2%, half inch to 12 ratio. And it's facing west. what you see here, no sedums. People tried sedums in this area with, 4 or 5 inches of substrate and pretty predictable. The plants could not tolerate the summer intense heat. But by adding the depth and matching the depth of the roots for these plants, we have some success. So if you look at the top of this image, to the left, the plant spacing is quite a bit further apart. And, part of it, I think, accepting green roofs is looking at the local adaptation of that. Beyond the roof, you see the natural landscape. The plants are not continuous. It's not a carpet, right? The plants are spread out. So on this green roof, on the upper part, the dry part of the roof, the plants are spreading out. And down at the lower end of the roof, where there's a localized drainage, the moisture gathers there. So the water drains very slowly. There's more moisture, so the plant density is greater. So in this case, I think it's a brilliant adaptation of the idea of a green roof and matching it for the local climate and selecting plants that can handle the different moisture regimes that are there. So irrigation, yes, I think absolutely you need water because the plants don't have that ground connection, right? The soil, the deeper you go into the ground, the soil, the cooler the soils are. But with a green roof, those substrates heat up. The deeper the substrate is, the more ability you have to keep the roots cool. But regardless, irrigation, I think, is needed because of that lack of ground connection. So what about this dichotomy of, there's very little water, but how do you find sustainable sources of water so you're not using municipal water or public water systems? Harvested rainwater is an excellent source of water. So during the rainy season, capture that water and use that for irrigation. Gray water, this is water inside the buildings. So for sinks, faucets, you capture that water and use it for the green roof. People are doing that. Or if there's a local pond or a natural water source. Okay. Let me advance to this slide here. A couple examples. This image on the left, Heron's Head. This is in San Francisco area. They have a Mediterranean climate, plenty of water during the winter, but very dry for a long period of time during the summer. So they oversize very large cisterns. The green roof is right up above. They have not run out of water because they capture all the water from the roof during the winter, and they use that. So that's a sustainable source. On the left, this hospital, this is a very large building that fills a whole city block. They have 5 green roofs, and they capture all of the water from the roofs. And the cistern here is behind that wall. So it fills up the entire part of the basement, very large cistern. And so they have mechanical pumps and systems. It's a very complex kind of water harvesting system. Waiting for my slide to advance. Okay. So in Seattle, Washington, they have dry summers. And this building, you can see on the top left, this is the Bullitt Office Center. They have a wonderful website. They give you all the data, the research on this. But very simply, they're using a wetland green roof here. They capture all the water from the roof. All the water from the roof is the drinking water. The water that goes through the sinks is captured in tanks, and they use the wash the hands. So this image on the bottom right, that is secondary use. So that's gray water, black water. Then they pump that to the roof. So that image of the rushes and the horsetail plant up on the roof, that's a wetland green. Because when people use the water in the building, that's stored and it uses, it's a flat roof, so it's a wetland. They use no water from the city at all. It's all comes water from the sky and from the people who use water inside the building. Okay, so I'm going to end here with a discussion about plants and best performing. I would agree with the previous two conversations. Go out into your natural environment and find the plants that are growing in shallow, gravelly habitats, or if you want a wetland roof, plants that are growing in wet areas, and learn about those. I think it's really important to have diversity. Succulents, perennials, shallow, rooted, woody plants, annuals. So annual plants can come back if there's a drought. Also bulbs can be important. And matching the plant community to the deck slope, right? You don't want to have a mismatch. So by this, then nature, what I'm showing here is a cross-section of a natural community, okay? So at the top of a hill, to the right, there are going to be plants living in drier environments. And in the middle, you might have some plants that survive in dry, but also sometimes wet. Okay, those can be very good for a semi-intensive kind of roof with a low slope deck. And then the wetland kind green roofs, you look at the environments where plants are growing in slow draining and conditions. So nature becomes a teacher for the kind of plant communities. And then the animals, the biodiversity that are native to those systems can go to those kinds of roofs as well. Okay, in terms of installation and maintenance, I want to hit just a couple points. There are different ways to establish plants. You can pre-grow the plants, obviously, like from a nursery, but also it may be possible to start plants by seed if they're done at the right time of the year. And I'll show an example of that. Also bulbs, other forms of plants. So there are inexpensive ways to populate a roof. I think that small plants in the semi-arid, if you grow a very small plug, a couple centimeters deep, and try to grow that, a green roof is not a good nursery. It depends on when the plants are installed, I think. But it's better to have larger pre-grown plants to bring them in because they're healthier, they're stronger, they can handle that transition. And I have a couple examples. This green roof is in the San Francisco area. They established all of the vegetation by collecting seeds on the site. Okay, if you look on the image on the right, in the background is a meadow, a coastal meadow. So they collected the seed source and they mixed the growing media from the natural gravel and sand and compost from the site. And then they established the seed there. So this is an all locally native green roof. Ecologists were involved with designing this green roof system and some landscape architects or firms. So it was a variety of people involved. Really fabulous way to design and establish a green roof. This green roof is in New Mexico. It's up around 5,000 feet altitude, so it's a little cooler than down in the hot valley. However, they started the plants here from pre-grown mature plants, and they're also using harvested rainwater here. And the substrates are deep. It's 30 centimeters, at least 12 inches deep. And they have a variety of depth of soil so that there's more than one kind of microclimate here. So there's variety. And that's it. So I'd love to open it up to what we're doing next here. Yeah. Okay,
I think it's over to me. First of all, we're 5 minutes to the hour when we're meant to finish. Are we allowed to go over a little bit, Elizabeth or Izzy?
Yes, sure. I just wanted to tell you that there are some questions in the chat and the questions section that you might address, please.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, I've looked at those questions. I was going to ask a few questions from my experience from where I am, but could I just highlight to everybody in the audience, there's a poll. If you could answer that so we know where you're from. It's always interesting to know where people are from. So what I find very interesting about what the three of you have said and your experiences is a more diverse plant community is good. And on that, because it seems to me that we've always inherited a kind of industrial product-based solution to extensive green roofs from the early German market, and that actually all three of you are saying that we kind of need to change that. How do you, and that's kind of what you're concluding there, that you need that diversity of species, local species. Over to you, Maurizio, because you've got that nice Mediterranean meadow you showed.
Yeah. Of course, you know, Dusty, that we produce substrate because we have to guarantee also other performances in our country. No, so we have to guarantee the life for the plants, but also runoff coefficient and insulations and so on, thermal insulation and so on. Your question is interesting because we found, in fact, that is, as I said, some techniques made in Germany are not possible in our area, and we have to adapt the substrate. But still, I think it's very difficult to use local soil, because then you don't have the guarantee of the property of the characteristic of this soil. So this is our opinion. No? So if you want to work on a water retention curve, you want to really know how much water you need, all these things, which thickness is the best, how do you manage with local soil? So we are still convinced that the best thing is to use, for sure, different substrates in different areas, but still industrial substrate.
Okay, but Paolo, you were also saying, like, I get the feeling from some of the early pictures you showed of the sedum blankets is that you as a contractor are asked to install those, but they're not necessarily correct for your kind of climate, and that diverse vegetation that all three of you have shown is probably a better way forward in the south.
Yes, I'm quite sure it is. In the beginning, as all of us, we tried the catalog from the north and applied in the south, and it was very tough to handle. And as Mauricio said in his presentation, when you have a very thin substrate sedum green roof in our climate conditions, you need to be an expert to drive that green roof to a success. Otherwise, it will be really a mess. It will be much more easier for any gardener not expert on green roofs to use, like you see in this picture, to use Rosmarinus prostratus or a Festuca glauca or other this type of plants that are completely able to handle almost the same thickness of substrate, but they really perform well. And I have my opinion, my agronomic feeling that these kind of plants that develop these aerial leaves and this crown of leaves really protect the sunlight to arrive and to reach the substrate, eating up the root zone. And sedum plant, because it doesn't really grow a lot, they can accumulate the heat near the root zone, and so they have very high difficulties to survive in these conditions. We cannot forget that the leaves of the Crassulacea plants have water, and if the intensity of our sunlight arrive on those leaves, what happens is that they will harvest the heat of the sun, and it will be the root zone not so with such a shallow thin layer of substrate cannot survive because they cannot go down and try to protect themselves in much safer areas. So yes, for sure, these mix of plants are much more successful in our climate conditions. Yeah.
Yeah, and Bruce, because I know your book, you talk about, and I don't want to get into substrates because Maurizio and Paolo and I could talk substrates for a long time. So we're not going to go into substrates, natural soils or not, today. But Bruce, you've got all the way up from Austin, Texas, all the way up to from the Colorado River or whatever the river is down at the bottom of Texas, all the way up to Seattle in the west. And what you showed a lot there is green roofs which have space between the plants, because that is actually more like a sagebrush desert and is more characteristic of your region. And often people just want complete coverage. I mean, can you respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Good question. Those roofs without complete coverage were primarily in the desert Southwest. So New Mexico, Arizona, Eastern California, where they have 10 inches of rain a year, very low rainfall. However, they do get some summer rains during monsoons. So maybe short local bursts. The West Coast, we see a lot of meadow roofs. So there can be roofs with complete coverage, but with grasses instead of sedums. And in the Midwest, there are also meadow type roofs that work. But I think it has more to do with the presence of water, if there is irrigation or not, and also the depth of the substrate. So if it's shallow, I think you need the water. And some of that goes to, what is the purpose of the roof? Is it, will people be looking at it? Does it need to be attractive? Or is it covering the top of a roof that nobody will see, but it's more of a habitat for wildlife, or just managing the stormwater for when it does rain? Okay,
thanks for that, Bruce. Now, I just want to add a comment to all of that, because what I find interesting in my time in London is that actually I'm fighting to do roofs more like Southern Europe because of climate change. And actually, what you do in the South is things that I'm doing here, which actually make better green roofs. And I think for the listeners, plant available water, which St. Maurizio talks about in detail, is a very, very important concept in green roofs. I'm going to ask you one more question to the panel, and then I've got a couple of questions in the thing. I like what you said, Bruce. I wrote it down. It said water from the sky. I like that. And I've always been fascinated once I saw a solar panel on a green roof delivering condensation in the morning, condensation, not rain. And I thought a lot about coastal areas of Southern Europe and San Francisco, about solar panels being fog catchers. And I had a colleague in Greece who was putting hairy leaf plants to capture condensation when it was happening. So, getting water from the sky when there's condensation. Any thoughts, Bruce?
Yes. Oh, that's a fabulous idea. I didn't show the image, but there is a green roof in the San Francisco area where they do that. They have solar panels, and in between they have grasses and sedums right below where those panels are. And the roof is irrigated, but all of the moisture comes from the sky. So they're not using water from the city. It's just whatever falls from the sky, it's being collected and used. But I think condensate is a great idea, especially in areas with fog and a lot of moisture in the air in the morning time.
Maurizio, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, we don't. In Italy, we don't have so many areas in which you have water condensation in the morning. Maybe near the lakes in the north of Italy, there, and then we get good experience because, for example, sedum carpet in that area, it works very well. Normally, it's not enough. It's not enough. So we always have to think about the irrigation. But what we try to do is to use less water is possible. Of course, that's the challenge. Of course, so we try to use. Have you seen in the picture meadow mixer that are not just made like this, invented for the moment, but we have a study behind that, because it is an association of plants that really needs very low quantity of water. And the advantage, which is that you keep very low water content in the substrate. So when you have rain, you can use all the rain. This is what we try to do. Of course, if you go to Sicily, in which you have 2 months of rain, that's not possible. Also, this you have to use as the Dvorak shows some water reservoir somewhere, and then irrigate with that water. This is the only way.
Okay, now, Paolo, I'm going to feed into this, because when I met you first, and there was a Spanish contractor who put a green roof up in Mallorca, he told me that he didn't irrigate it at all because the sea every morning gave the water to the roof. Do you remember that conversation? But you're very coastal in Portugal, so you got a lot of sea coming in the morning. What do you think about getting water from the sky?
Yes, I'm sure it is a great idea, and also we cannot forget something, and that can also works on that direction. When I went to Oman to study a new project, I was amazed because I was in a place with an average of 80 to 100 millimeters of rain each year. But it is a coastal place, and they have a lot of water on the air, and so they have an average of 4 air conditions units per person in Oman. 4 units, and so they can produce a lot of water from that moisture that came from the sea and release it in the green roof system. This is something that it's maybe a good research line in the next years.
Well, before I ask the question, I've got to tell you, I went to a roof in Istanbul once, and we went, my God, it's brilliantly green all the way down the middle. And we realized that somebody had undone the air conditioning fan condensate pipe, and it was irrigating the roof every morning down the middle. And it's kind of interesting taking water from the sky. But I've got one question, and it's really for you, Bruce, and it's about using grey water. Thank you. I have another question to Professor Dvorak. Are the plants in arid areas, and sedums especially, not sensitive to the quality of water? The recommendation of using grey water includes AC recycled water. I suppose it's a concern that there's nutrients and soap and stuff in grey water, and could that affect the plants? Bruce?
Yeah, that's a good question. The Bullitt Center in Seattle, they're collecting all the water, and there is some filtering that have sand filters, and so the water essentially that makes it to the roof, it's just nitrogen, phosphorus remaining, and so the plants that are there on the roof are adapted to wet, hydric conditions, and they're performing quite well. When I saw it, the roof was already I think 5 years old or more, and the plants were still, doing quite well. I don't know. I guess if there's heavy use of soaps, it could create challenges for that. I think we need more research on it, but it's a real nice connection, right? The Vancouver Convention Center is probably the most successful example of that. That's a very large meadow roof, and they collect the water from the sinks there. I think because of the dilution of water, there's so much water that, and it's also filtered first through a sand filter. And so I don't know, it appears to be working in some of those situations where it is. Maybe with a small roof or a small space, if you have concentrations, there could be problems, but some of these larger applications seem to be working.
Great. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little conclusion, if I may, and I'm not sure how I meant to end this because I'm not too sure. But what I find really interesting, you know, I've been all over the world, looked at green roofs, and I spent a lot of time with Maurizio and Paolo in person, is that actually in terms of climate change and the biodiversity crisis, we really need to be looking at how the South can make better green roofs, because it's actually going to tell the North how to make better green roofs. And so on that, I'd like to say thank you for everybody. And I think I can say goodbye, particularly thanks to Maurizio, Paolo, and Bruce, particularly coming from Texas, because it's very early in the morning in Texas. We did it this late so that you could join. So thank you. And I hope that we might follow this particular topic up in the future, because I think it's a very interesting one. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And also, we would just want to remind you to always check out our website to be informed about the next webinars coming up. So most probably the next one. Yeah, Dusty, you can announce it.
Yes, sorry, that's the one thing, I forget things. I might be the president, but I do need to be told what to do. Is we've got one about, you know, maintenance and problems with green roofs, looking at issues once green roofs have been installed, with a focus on maintenance and solving those issues. And we will announce a date for that in the short term, and it'll be on all our Twitter and LinkedIn and whatever feeds. So look forward to you joining us on that one. And thanks for listening. Over to you, Issy.
Thank you for everyone for joining. And yeah, we hope to see you soon.
Yeah. Ciao. 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 Grazie mille. Obrigado.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.